So welcome to the best slot that can be for a session right after lunch where everybody's tired. It's a good time for you to take part in this session. A value-based approach to driving revenue. My name is Agur Tzur. This is an Israeli name, so if you have any problems pronouncing that, just know that everybody has problems pronouncing that. Even Israelis, by the way. I'm a senior customer success here at Tango. I'm working from the Israeli office. Instead of just putting all the customers that I manage, I decided to go with the ones who actually are part of this summit. So if any of them are of interest to you, I'll be happy to connect you with them. And fun fact about me, I used to be a professional hip hop dancer. Yeah. So don't expect anything as part of the presentation or anything. Okay, I'm just saying that now. No. Okay, so what are we going to have today? So today's agenda. So we're going to talk about traditional renewal and expansion approaches. After we'll do that, I want us to cover some of the issues in these approaches. Later on, I want to speak about an alternative approach, which is that the CS team is managing the renewals and the expansions. This is a question that comes a lot, like should the CS own renewals, shouldn't they do it? So I want to talk a little bit about perceived challenges and pushbacks that this approach is getting. Talk about the motivations and why there's some good aspects of having the customer success team own some revenue responsibility. We'll get more practical, and we'll talk about tactics and strategies on how to pinpoint value and what you can do to elevate it. And we'll leave some time for Q&A. Any questions before we start? No? Just know that whenever I'll ask an open question and nobody will answer me, I will point on you and I will use you. Okay, so just know that. So here are some traditional expansion and renewal approaches. Approach number one can be that the customer success manager only owns the adoption and the return on investment of the customer, while account executive, sales manager, it doesn't really matter how do you call it in your organization, is in charge of the renewals, upsells, and cross-sells. Okay? With the raise of the hand, how many are using the first approach in their company? Okay, that's not too much. That's nice. The second approach is where the customer success manager owns the adoption, ROI, but also manages the renewal, while upsells and cross-sells are being managed by the sales team. How many use this approach in their company? Okay. And approach number three, adoption, ROI, renewals, and upsells are being managed by the CS team, while cross-sells are being handled by the sales team. How many use this approach in their organization? Okay, nice. You fell into my trap because so many people did not raise their hand. So I want to understand what is the approach that you have in your company. So who didn't? So I want to talk a little bit about some issues that can be seen when using these traditional approaches. There's some confusion in ownership. I mean, the customers are talking to the customer success managers on a day-to-day basis. Then when they have some questions regarding upsell, some questions regarding renewal, sometimes I need to go and ask my sales manager or the account executive the same question that the customer just asked me, which causes some delays in response, right? A simple question. Can you give me a quote of additional 2 licenses? Of course, let me just grab the quote from a different person within the organization and then I'll get back to you with that. There's no real single point of contact for the customer, which is always an issue. He doesn't know. So I'm supposed to talk to you about these kind of subjects and I'm supposed to talk to him about these kind of subjects. There's some pricing misalignment. Maybe as customer success managers, we want to have our customer have the latest features that our platform or our service has to offer because it can increase their value. That can increase their adoption. So maybe we want to give them at a better price. But from the sales perspective, maybe from the sales manager perspective, they don't want to cut the price because they want to sell it at the highest price as possible. So sometimes there's misalignment around that. And of course, there are multi-touch points working with VPs, legal, procurement, which always causes some issues. So I really want to talk about an alternative approach where the customer success manager has some responsibility and ownership about renewals and expansions. When they are managing the renewals and expansion, there's no confusion of ownership. The customer knows that he needs to go to the customer success manager and he will get the answers that he needed. There's no delays in responses. He's the only person who is in charge of that. One single point of contact, we said that. Pricing is decided by CSM. Of course that he knows what the pricing range is. And it's not like, hey, you can take it for free or you can get it for free. But at least he understands the account details and he has better understanding of what is the price that the customer will be willing to pay or is able to pay in order to have this functionality that might increase his value. And of course, there's one person who's working with the various touch points within the company. So I want to talk a little bit about the perceived challenges. I think that everybody here in the room have probably took part in some conversation regarding whether customer success managers should own the renewal, should own the expansion. And I can tell you that on our 2019 Executive Summit earlier this year, we had a panel on customer success manager who should own revenue. And we saw customers from Waystars, we had customers from Randall Riley, we had customers from Data Intensity, and we saw that everybody of them have different approach regarding whether they should do it or not do it. So some of the pushbacks that can be seen even in many customer success forums or any conversation that you get into are like, how am I supposed to be an advocate to my customer if I'm constantly trying to push additional sales? Won't my customer trust me less if they know I'm always looking to upsell them? And how do I find time to be strategic if I'm quota carrying? So now that we talked a little bit about the pushbacks that we can see from customer success managers themselves, right? That they don't think that they can fill in this position and take this responsibility on them. Let's talk a little bit about the motivation. And in the motivation part, I really divided it into two parts. One is the company's motivation. The other part of it is the CSM motivation, which will be the next slide. So from a company perspective, the customer success managers own the day-to-day relationship. Customers feel more comfortable with them, feel more comfortable bringing up their needs, talking about their problems, maybe even talking about money with someone that you are familiar with can be an easier conversation to do rather than a stranger. And of course, I don't think that sales managers should be strangers in any way, but at least when I'm talking to a person that I have good relationship with, maybe having this conversation might be easier. As we said, the CSM knows the customer business and needs better than anyone, which automatically ties to the fact that because they are in charge of the customer value and the ROI, they can tie the upsell opportunity to its needs, right? To either his needs or his problems that he's having. So, and this will of course eliminate the multiple cooks in the kitchen situation in front of the customer where too many people have their hands in the plate and we don't really know what we need to do. From a customer success manager perspective, here are some motivations. You get a bonus structure and compensation. I think this is always can be a good thing to have, right? You're leveraging and practicing additional skill set. I mean, I think that everybody of us, like anyone, would like to have more skills, would like to learn more things as part of his position. If we're limiting our position, our job to specific areas, we might miss some things that we might be even good at, by the way. So having this responsibility can help us be introduced to a new skill set that we didn't know that we need or even have. And it can help us get some internal recognition and have a personal growth path opportunity within our company. Think of making this amazing upsell deal, right? You're working so hard on a day-to-day with your customers. You're showing them the value. They love the product. And they just made a great upsell. Don't you want to take the credit for it? I think that you should have it. I think that you're one of the reasons why the customer even got this idea of upselling, because of the work that you did. So why not get recognition on that? So we talked about the approaches. We talked about several issues that we can see. We talked about the alternative approach, right? I'm not trying to say that it's the wrong one or the right one. I'm just saying that it's an alternative one. Let's talk a little bit about how and when we can pinpoint value to the customer that will allow us to have better renewal conversation with them, better upsell or expansion conversation with them. So one way for that, and this is, I think, the basic of everything, is as a CSM, we really need to understand our customers' business. That meaning understanding their KPIs, what they are looking to achieve, what's their data, right? When we understand our customers in this level, it's easier for us to tie it to any expansion opportunity that we might see. Beta research and testing. Allow your customer to participate in betas. Allow your customers to participate in trials. You'll be surprised by the value that you are getting from that, let alone the value that they are getting from that. Because maybe even playing with a new feature that your company has, or maybe a service or a feature that is currently not part of the customer package, and having him play with it, see the value that he might get from it, might help you make this deal and make this exponential deal simply because he understood the value only once he had it. Because maybe before he has it, he doesn't really understand what is missing. So allow yourself to give it to your customer if you can. You should definitely have business review session and value realization discussions with your customer. Now I understand there are tier 1 customers, there are tier 2 customers, there are tier 3. It doesn't matter how we call them. Maybe for the tier 3, we'll have business review once a year. For the tier 1 customers, we'll have a business review once a quarter, right? But you definitely need to have this kind of conversation. You need to meet them face to face. You want to do it via phone call. Find the best way to do them, but make sure that you understand whether your customer is getting value from your product or not. CAB, or Customer Advisory Board. Customer Advisory Board, how many of you have this initiative in your company? Okay, cool. As I said here, it really get an inside look into your customer minds and opinions about your product and service. And this is something that is really important for us. Yes, we are the experts in our area, but it's always good to understand the mindset and the opinions of others. And by listening to our customers that we trust them, they can really help us improve our product and also improve our business offering based on the feedback that we are getting from them. Maybe we don't even understand what's the value that they are getting from us, right? Maybe we think it's one thing, and maybe it's even bigger picture that we could have think of. So allow yourself to listen to your customers. Goal settings. What are the goals for the next 2 quarters? What are the goals for the next year? We need to have these discussions with our customers, because without them, we can't really understand whether we were able to show them the value that they were looking to achieve by purchasing our product. And customer advocacy and references. All of you, and I'm sure about it, have some great success stories with other customers. Allow yourself to use these success stories and share them with other customers. There's no better sell. You definitely think that your service, your platform, whatever you're in charge of is great, probably. This is why you work there. But think of another customer who's hearing the success and the value that another customer was able to achieve by using your product. I think that it sells you better, your product better, and you should use that. Okay? Any questions on these? After everything that I said, I do want to make this note. Okay? This is not a one size that fits all. Okay? I understand how the scale of the relationship, the size of the portfolio and the company, and the complexity of the product can influence the needs for specific roles. Just as you mentioned that you have renewal managers within your organization, right? Let's think of a company that has a customer success team of hundreds of CSMs, right? Maybe they are managing billions of dollars, and maybe they have 600 products and X amount of line of businesses. If the success manager will be in charge of the renewals, he would not be able to do anything else but managing the renewals. So understand that the approach is not that the customer success manager must manage the renewals and expansion. It has some dependencies. But what I want us to understand is that the customer success manager definitely needs to own some part in the revenue responsibilities of your customers because his ability to assure that the customer is getting value from your product. So how many of you have seen the report that was created by Tango? And I think Kevin, you and Anne has presented the results of it. How many of you have seen that? Excellent. So I really want to talk a little bit about some of the findings that we saw there. So 50% of the customer success professionals who answered the survey have said and mentioned they have some responsibility regarding revenue. So 50% is not a small part. It hasn't changed since last year's survey. But we still see that 50% of all customer success managers have some revenue responsibility. But talking a little bit about compensation and bonus structure, we can see that 21% of customer success managers who participated in the survey had some commission from upsells, and 18% of them had commission from renewals. That means that, as we talked about, right, having CSM, having some bonus structure and compensation based on the results they are achieving. Talking about the bonus structure, we see that 52% had percent of renewals incorporated into their bonus structure, and 30% had a bonus structure that is impacted by the percent of their upsells. Okay? I want to talk a little bit about results, not only talking about why I think it's good. You need to understand and see for yourself, right? So this is a TSIA report that is called How to Increase Revenue Responsibility Within Customer Success. Here are some results of customer success teams with revenue responsibility. Higher product subscription growth rates. Okay, so for companies who their CSMs had some revenue responsibility, show higher product subscription growth rate. They are also showing lower sales and marketing costs, thanks to the work of the customer success managers. There are 3-time percentage point improvement in dollar retention rates, and 27-point net promoter score increase. I think these numbers speak for themselves, right? And it goes back to what we said. I don't mean to say that customer success manager should definitely own the renewals. Again, it depended on the size of the size of the company, the portfolio, and the complexity of the product. But with that said, having the customer success managers own revenue responsibility, whichever it is in your organization that can fit them, shows these results. Okay? We talked about the theory. Now let's understand what we need to do in order to make it happen in our organization. So what we're going to do, and this is something that I want you to use in a home assignment, is to create your own renewal success block. Okay? How many of you, let's start with this. How many of you are using success blocks? Nice. You kind of split the room by it. Like this, it's hands here. Okay. And how many of those who are using success blocks are using renewal success block? Perfect. We are going to improve it. Right after this session, everybody is going to have at least one success block. Okay, so the way that we are going to do that is, and this is how we are going to utilize Tango for that. So we're going to use success blocks, success flows, segments, success plays and campaigns, and scorecards. First, we need to start with the success block. We need to set the goals for our team. A simple goal can be, what is the percentage, like what is the renewal rate that you want to achieve? Okay, but it can be anything. It can be for a specific queue. It can be goals, different goals for your tier 1 renewals and for your tier 3 renewals, your enterprise customers and your SMB customers, right? Define your goal. That's the first thing that you need to do. I think that every organization should have its own renewal goals, and Success Block will help you put them on paper, right? And track whether you are meeting these goals or not. After we have our goals and we set them for ourselves, we wrote them down, we understand them, we really need to look at the data that is available for us, right? We need to understand how we want to slice and dice the data that is available for us into Tango and how we are going to utilize it. So it can be different customer tiers. It can be your different products. It can be different life cycle stage that the customer is at, right? Maybe we understand that after onboarding, they probably are not supposed to renew, but maybe for your organization, the first year is like the honeymoon year, and you treat them differently than those who are after 2 years are more established in a way, right? So maybe you have different goals for them. Maybe you want to look at them differently. What are your renewal forecasts? Whether you use our revenue center, whether you use it through your CRM, track it, understand it. How many have received forecast? How many got a negative forecast of downgrade or churn? Manage your renewal risk. How many customers are at risk? How many have poor health and they are 90 days before their renewal date, right? And of course, and we talked about it, when was the last time that you had business review with them? How many even had business reviews? When did they have their last value realization discussion or activity? Of course, these are all examples. I'm not trying to say that these are the only segments that you need to create. It's just a way to open your mind to it. We need to create some automations, right? We want to scale. Success plays and campaigns are a great way for us to understand how we want to do it. So how soon the CSM should discuss the upcoming renewal with the customer? Is it 60 days, 90 days? Are both of them too late? Maybe we want to start the process 180 days before. Again, it probably depended on the product. It probably depended on the tier. But you need to understand it and build the different automations based on these different needs. What should be done when a customer adoption is dropping? Right. Let's say the adoption rate has dropped to in 30%, or their license utilization has dropped in X%. What do you need to do? What are the actions that you want to take? Because eventually, if your customers will not use the product properly, they might not renew or even downgrade, right? I think that everybody of us seen examples in which, from a product usage perspective, we are seeing a lot of activities that customers are not even getting to it. But from license utilization perspective, we see that the numbers are not that high, right? Because let's say that we have 10 users, 5 are using the product like on the weekend, okay? But the other ones are not using it at all. Eventually, even if your product usage is high, your license utilization is low. So they'll probably renew, but at the end of the year, they will say that they want to downgrade to 5 licenses. And it's still something that we need to take care of. What should be the frequency of our business reviews and value realization discussions? Create automation around these kind of things. And of course, scorecards. Scorecards are the way for us to track whether we are making any progress. We have our goals, we have our segments, we have our automations. Are we reaching the goals that we've set for ourselves? If we're not reaching the goals that we have set for ourselves, probably something is broken in the chain. We need to understand what's broken and we need to fix it. Maybe we need to create different success plans. Maybe we need to change something within our campaign mechanism. Everything can be relevant, but this is the way for you to track your progress and understand whether you need to change it or not, or whether you're making or you're in a good way to make the progress that you wanted to see. Questions before we move on to the conclusion? Okay, fair enough. So for conclusion, while customer success managers are primarily focused on driving outcomes for customers, their position offers an unparalleled vantage point for expansion opportunities. Customer success selling must be in context of helping with problems, challenges, and initiatives. Help solve business problems and get additional value from investments. Done well, customer success will drive revenue and greater customer outcomes. Sales and customer success managers work better together. Questions? I really don't think that there is like one answer. Yeah. And it goes back to the type of customer, like the customer tiers. I can tell you, and I'm totally open to sharing that, from the Tango perspective, when we manage our renewals, we are starting dealing with the renewals 180 days before the renewal. This is like for our enterprise customer, for our tier 1, tier 2 customers, 180 days before. We assure that we have our forecasts for them. We understood whether there are any open risks with them. When was the last time that we had our business review? we must have the business review between 120 days to 90 days before the renewal. Why? Because this is the way and this is the place for us to understand whether our customers is getting the value that they were expecting to get. And this also allows us to have enough time to deal with it and solve any issues that we might see as part of the business review before the renewal. Nobody really wants to get into these kind of discussions. No, I'm not really getting the value that I was expecting to get from you 30 days before renewal or even 60 days. I think that all of us can agree that it will be a little bit too late.
So I think in general, when you're thinking about, I'd separate maybe the idea of having some performance management system from an incentive plan, because I think those things can be a little bit different. And so in those two scenarios, whether it's just renewal or you have some sort of an evergreen auto renewal model, generally there'll be some leading indicators that you can look at, which will represent, are you really doing the work that would be required in order to produce the results that you want? Those may or may not be part of your incentive plan. So you could have a bonus structure that's a non-commission based plan where you actually have some of those activity measures to say there might be mandatory bodies of work that might be inherent in a success play, let's say, that must be done because you know if you do those things in some reliable or systematic way, it's going to produce the results that you want. That's different from measuring maybe the lagging side of it, which would be the outcome, which typically would be, it's an actual renewal yield, it's a renewal rate, and generally separating that from kind of the commingled part of it where there's some expansion or upsell that goes along with it. So if you can look at the same scope of license, so what did they have before, what did they renew now, and are you getting 100%, maybe you had an uplift that was expected and it should be greater than 100%, or you might not be at that point, you might actually have a revenue leak problem and your expectation would be different. So I think there's some baseline work that says what's actually the result that you would want to produce for the company. Having some outcome measure that may or may not be in some compensation plan, setting that target right. But whether it's incentive-based or not, I would have a performance management approach that looks at, are you doing the work in a proactive fashion that's going to produce the results that you want? And so I think there are opportunities to put incentives on some of those activities, not necessary if you just, you assume that must be done and you're providing the tools and ability to produce the results and you want to measure the outcome. So I think implementation can vary, but problems are going to be different. If you're getting great yield and auto renewal is working, and it's just you want to keep that going, maybe the focus isn't on what the outcome was. Maybe the focus is, did you do the work that keeps that pattern actually continuing on? Yeah. Sure. So I think there's a variety of things. I would actually suggest even starting with some mindset related work. It came up at the start of it, and Igor had the slide up there, and I think many people basically said, yeah, that we feel that, see that in our teams all the time. And I think that is it is a mindset obstacle, and I think it's one that can be overcome because if you believe in the products and services that your company provides, and you believe that they're going to be helpful and add value to customers, and you're that person, Igor put it as there's this unique vantage point. And if you're that person that can see what a customer is trying to do and achieve, and you know that what you can offer and provide would actually help to produce that result, you kind of can't sit on the sideline and say, well, I'm not going to do it because that would require that they spend money with, and so there's a value trade that happens there. And for most businesses, they're for-profit businesses, right? That's part of the partnership model, and so there should be a belief that there's heavy value in return for a customer, and you're actually helping by providing access to that capability. So I think in making the transition, there's a big part that's the mindset. If it's going to be brand new for people, training that goes along with it. So selling approaches. Not everyone is coming from that experience on having to actually manage a forecast and all of the various stages. So there's a lot of that, proposal structure. So certainly there's transition approaches you could take. That maybe starting with a lead, process might make an easier on-ramp rather than a hard cutover. So I think there's all of those approaches, and then when it comes to the actual transaction part itself, I think that really depends on the complexity. Igor also said, there's one size doesn't fit all, type of a thing. If you're a company and you have, let's say, $100 million transactions, my guess is your contract is like this thick. It's not like some click-on order form. It's not going to be a simple contracting event, and there's a lot of complexity there. So generally, that requires some specialization. So in those cases, it doesn't mean that a CS team can't participate in that, but there might be subject matter experts, so a contract specialist that can drop in and help. There might be a product team or specialist if it's a large product portfolio to cover, because one person can't be the expert in all of those areas. So I think you just consider those variety of factors and come up with a roadmap that's going to yield the result that you want. Because if you're not prepared and you haven't gone through the right preparation, enablement, and everything else, the result expectation is going to continue to be there, and you obviously want to make sure that you hit the results that you want. With that, I think we can wrap things up. I'll give one final reminder on the G2 crowd reviews. It seems like we have a few more minutes, literally just right there on the left. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.